We need kind of shorter chairs for these short people. Inclusivity tip.
To date myself, but remember that Ally McBeal where she would dangle her feet, if anyone is old enough to remember Ally McBeal. Well, the energy in this room is great, and this is so exciting to be here. And I have had the opportunity to get to moderate this panel, but also to get to know these three women over the past few days as we got ready for this. And it's been a true privilege. Just to reiterate, my name is Gretchen Walsh, and I am the Chief Client Officer at McKinney. And I'm excited to be talking about women in marketing today. And I've been at McKinney actually for 17 years now. And when I started at McKinney, I had 0 children, and there was one single woman on the executive leadership team at McKinney. Now I have 2 high schoolers. The executive team is over 50% females, and that includes our C-suite. So we've made a lot of progress. There's a lot of progress to go, and I've seen the industry had a lot of progress. So I think a lot of this conversation is really positive. It's about the celebration of where we've come, but we also want to talk about where we still have to go and where the opportunities exist as we work together and we champion each other, both as females and as broader partners in the marketing community. So I'm going to start off, and I'm going to have each of you, I'd love for you to just tell all of us a little bit about your journey to where you are today as really senior women in marketing. So Amanda, you want to start us off?
Sure. I'm Amanda Simerman. I am the Senior Director of our plant-based creamers and Whiteners business, which Whiteners, for those outside of Danone, is half and half and heavy whipping cream. So all things better for you and your coffee. My career has been in marketing since the beginning. I started at an agency and worked for clients like Sara Lee and Holiday Inn, and then worked at Kraft Foods also for a little bit. And then moved to the client side after business school at Miller Coors, and then at Pepsi, and have been at Danone for the last 6.5 years. Worked in our yogurt business unit as well as our beverages business unit today. And as I think about my career as a woman in marketing, I'm really excited to be here to just talk about, to Gretchen's point, where things have been and where they're going, and how much we're doing both at Danone and just in general to help promote women in marketing.
Hi, I'm Crystal Thomas. I'm the VP of Brand and Marketing for Zelle. I've worked there for about 7 years in various roles. I actually started as the first marketing manager and have worked in various roles up now to being the VP and overseeing partner marketing, product marketing, consumer education, social, so a bunch of different areas. Every day is different and exciting, which is great. Prior to working for Zelle, I worked on the public relations agency side, and then I went in-house and I worked for a telecommunications company, managed their IPO communications. So super exciting journey, and excited to be here today and have this conversation with you all.
Great. And hi, everyone. I'm Quinn Kelsey. I am a director of communications for Vail Resorts. When you think of Vail Resorts, I'm sure you think of kind of what's in our backyard, Park City and Breckenridge and Vail Mountain. I actually oversee and have the privilege to oversee our 26 resorts in the Eastern region, which are pretty much aimed at growing the sport. They are strategically acquired and located outside of major metro areas, intended to provide additional access. So outside of St. Louis, outside of Chicago, outside of New York City, Minneapolis, I said Minneapolis. So really cool, really excited to talk a little bit about our efforts there in being inclusive in the sport of skiing, which we all know has historically been a white male dominated sport. Previous to that, I've worked for brands like Chipotle, and I've worked on the agency side. So have had the opportunity to be mentored by amazing men and women kind of throughout my career. And I'm also really excited because I am 22 weeks pregnant. I like the pregnancy vibes in this room. I think I've counted like 6 or 7 so far. And I'll just share a little bit about my journey this morning. I'm kind of at the phase where I need to start buying new clothes because they're not fitting. And I brought this brand new shirt for this panel. And I walked out and I was like, hey, babe, like, look at my, or I'm like, hey, babe, I cannot get the wrinkles out. And my husband kind of looks at me and he starts looking at my face. And I was like, no, my shirt. I can't get the wrinkles out of my shirt. So mentally, I'm a little bit there right now.
I love that. Wow. Good luck to him.
Yeah.
So Amanda, let's go back to you and talk a little bit about, I'd love to hear what Danone has really done to make a more inclusive environment and help, promote the growth of women in the environment in your time here.
Yeah, I think so. When I think about what we do as an organization, there's a couple of different avenues that I think about in terms of promoting inclusivity, but also just women in general. And one of the biggest ones is our parental bonding leave policy. So one of the great benefits of Danone is that we have an 18-week paid parental bonding leave for men and women. That's evolved over time, where we were originally very focused on mothers and caretakers, and then it's evolved to just a parental bonding leave, which I think is an amazing benefit. In addition, we focus on leveraging employee groups to help promote various aspects of diversity. So from a women perspective, our LIFT group is really focused on promoting women in business and providing different forums for different conversations. So we've had conversations where our GM, my GM, Dominic, has talked about what it's like to be an ally for women in business. We've also had conversations where different women who have gone through various pregnancy-related issues have spoken about their like what it's like. And so we bring in a lot of diverse perspectives on what it's like to be a woman in the business. And it's really a nice way to learn about different aspects and also start to think about your career and how you can connect with the women throughout the organization.
That's great. How about Vail? What are y'all doing?
Great. So I can speak a little externally and internally, I think, because if that's okay, they really tie together. But, first externally, what Vail has done is inclusion is just critical to growing that sport in general. We need to make the sport more accessible and more inclusive to more people. So we are deliberate about that with our pricing strategy. We are deliberate about that when it comes to our acquisition strategy. We're deliberate about that in terms of how we are portraying skiers and riders. Riders is another part of our inclusivity. Kind of getting away from this ski bro mentality and into anyone can learn to ski. You do not need to be wearing the coolest clothes and hitting the black diamonds. You can go out and have a fun time. You don't need to pay for fancy lodging or have, kind of that après experience. You can just go hit the slopes at Afton Alps in Minnesota and have fun. You can choose between that and bowling if you want to. So I think, that inclusion and that representation has been super critical and is super critical to how we keep this industry alive and thriving. So I think that mentality has really started to kind of come to life internally too. So I wanted to work at Vail Resorts forever. I've interviewed there so many times. Finally got a job. But I remember over the years, them asking in the past, well, can you ski blacks? Can you ski blues? Are you a skier or rider? I kind of wasn't. I ski greens and I look like a dork, and that's totally fine. But when I interviewed this time, they were very clear. You do not actually need to be a skier and rider. You need a passion for a great guest experience. And I think that has been super important. So that has really come to life. They've also just been super deliberate internally on growing women leadership. So just a couple, I think fascinating. 4 of our 5 Colorado resorts are actually led by women GMs. 9 of our resorts out of I'm not going to get the exact number right, but 9 are led by women overall. 45% of our corporate roles are led by women. where the opportunity lies. That 9 is really only 20% of our mountains. So obviously some opportunity there, but this deliberate, intentional culture on nurturing women leaders has really started to kind of take root, and it's been really awesome to be a part of.
That's great. I love the deliberate piece of that. It's so important, I think, for that belonging piece that you have to be deliberate. Crystal, you want to talk about Zelle and what you all are up to?
Yeah. So I would say many of the similar things that Amanda said. We recently, in the last year or so I'm in financial services, very historically male dominated industry. So we've made some really good progress over the last couple of years. We recently rolled out a paternity policy, so supporting both men and women, which is great. We've got access to some apps for new moms that I will admit, I don't have kids. I haven't checked them out yet, but I've heard that they're pretty cool to help support them on their journey when they come back to work. We also have some committees internally that are specifically focused on advancing women in tech. So we bring in a lot of speakers to help everyone across the organization that's interested understand how they can better support women, whether it's their colleagues or people that are on their teams, so that we're thinking about it across the organization. We also do a bunch of volunteer efforts. We work with multiple community organizations in the Arizona area. That's where my company is based. And yeah, so those are a couple of the things that we're doing. Also, we have, I think almost half of our C-suite is women, which is great. Like, again, financial services. So we're getting there, and it's great to see that leadership at the top.
Yeah, that's great. I love that, we all talked about, and I think our agency has it too, this partner leave and this paternity leave, because I think for that empathy piece and having the other person be home and understand what that's like has been tremendous part of this evolution as well. So much amazing progress in this space that I think we have all benefited from, but you can't help but think, like, what else? What else can we be doing in our organizations and the industry as large to continue this trajectory and this journey that we're on? So would love to hear from any of you ideas that you've been thinking about, or your organizations or beyond your organizations that you'd like to see us move forward.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just bring it right back to the parental leave. Great. Vail Resorts also has a great one, but we're still behind what they're doing in other parts of the world, and what they're doing even in other states. 3 months, 6 months, 3 months, 4 months, 5 months. Awesome. I don't know if anyone's tried to get on a daycare list lately in Colorado, but that still leaves about a 6-month gap between care and that kind of parental leave. So I think supporting parents, my husband doesn't get any. So I think supporting parents, regardless is really important, kind of helps, bridge that gap. So I hope, companies don't stay complacent in, this is what we've done and this is what we've always done. And that is something that's constantly being evaluated and given market conditions and kind of where people are located. So I'll just bring it back to that.
And I'll just build on that. So from a flexibility standpoint, I think one of the things that COVID has really highlighted is the fact that work-life balance is perhaps an unreal concept. And so the more that we as organizations and even the marketing community at large can embrace the idea of flexible work and being able to get your work done in the hours when you have available and still prioritize your family and your friends and having some time off, the better I think we will all be.
One thing that we've discussed a lot, and we haven't implemented this yet, is I think, and I have experience with this with many of my girlfriends, like they have built their careers and then had their families. And to your point, there's not a lot of flexibility. It's hard to have that balance. So are there additional programs that we can develop to provide that flexibility? Like, is there more, is is there a job share that we could do where we're getting multiple high-powered, awesome women to share one role? That's not something that's standard. I think some companies do it, but are there more programs like that where there is room for more flexibility?
And if I could just add one more thing, as hearing about all of these programs, you can have programs and employee resource groups and policies all day long. But if your culture isn't authentic, if your leadership doesn't really mean it, a lot of those policies they're not going to foster an inclusive environment. So I think just also the ability for leaders to keep themselves accountable and say, am I bringing these values truly to life? Am I truly interested in this person's work-life balance? Am I making sure they're taking advantage am I encouraging them to take advantage? I think, it really comes back to that authentic culture too.
Yeah, and I think that culture piece is really interesting because similar to the lead, everything that we're talking about isn't just beneficial for women in marketing, it's beneficial for everyone in marketing. And these are the things that should happen for all of us at large. And I think women are leading the way to making some of that change, but it's kind of to the benefit of everyone. So I think we as leaders do have to be accountable of that every single day. So we talked about organizations and at large, but personally, I know that I feel a lot of accountability and responsibility as a woman, as a senior leader. And as I talk to others, I hear that all the time. Like I have to step above, I have to take a role, I need to be the mentor. And I'd love just some stories, some anecdotes of you personally, what you were doing to really help other women progress in this industry and how that matters to you. Crystal, you want to go?
Sure. So I was thinking about this actually on my drive up here. I think about it kind of in three different ways. So first, like listening obviously to all of the folks on my team, but really understanding where they want to go and what they want to learn in their role, but also what else do they want to do? Where do they want to be in a few years? What other areas of the organization do they want to learn about? It doesn't have to be specific to my team or their role. And then thinking about how can I help them grow? What do I have at my fingertips, or what am I hearing about that could potentially help them? And then when something like that comes up, making it happen. So just as an example, I hired someone on my team that had worked in PR for a long time, had this great career in PR, and she joined my marketing team, and she hadn't worked on the marketing side, and there's a ton of analytics. So she was like, I really want to strengthen my analytical skills. I think it will make me a better leader eventually. And so I tried to think about how can I do this aside from sending her to a course? How can I help her and potentially someone else in our organization that's more involved with the analytics learn about marketing, an area that they're helping to support? So I set up a cross training. I worked with some other leaders and set up a cross training experience where she was working directly with one of the analysts to understand how they did their analysis. What were some of the things that they think about so she could get stronger there? And then in turn, the analyst, who was also a woman and really high potential, could learn a little bit about marketing, why we were asking for the data we were asking for, how we were thinking about it, so that they could both continue to grow. And then I think third thing would just be advocating, right? Like if you have people on your team that have great ideas or have the potential to take on new projects, bring up their name. Bring up their great ideas and continue to talk about them and elevate them so that when a new opportunity does come up, they're the first to be picked for it.
Amanda.
So when I think about mentoring, I know you have a question. Well, I know we were going to talk about women versus men and how we think about it. But the way I have always thought about it is there isn't a difference in terms of who I'm mentoring. It's more about the person and the style and what they need in terms of growth and development. And so one of the things that I have implemented on my team since, I don't know, for the last 10 to 12 years is every single person who reports to me has a monthly one-on-one where it's their time to talk about their career, their development, anything that they want to talk about to help us get to know each other as human beings and as people, but also to then make sure that I'm really aware of and understanding what is their career path, what do they want to get out of what they're doing, and how, to the point we were just talking about, how do I help them shape what they are doing on a daily basis to grow within their role and also provide additional experiences outside of that role. And that's really been, I think, a game changer for me in getting to know my team and also being able to be a really good advocate for them as I think about their career path and where they want to go.
I focused my mentoring a little bit in the last year, actually externally, and had the opportunity to teach a class at CU Boulder, a capstone for seniors, which was, no one tells you that when you teach a college class that they don't write the curriculum for you and then just give you the workbook. That was a shock. So I had a busy holiday season getting ready, but was able to pull a lot from my real world experience and mentor people that are just entering their careers. And that was a super awesome experience. And that's really what I treated it like. And I see some speakers in here too. Thank you. And we brought in a lot of real world professionals and so super cool. But kind of where I was going with it, I treated it like a mentorship, not just like a professorship. I wanted to be very accessible. I wanted to give them the candid firsthand insights of this is how you really can get a job. And let me connect you to my network. And it made me a better leader to my team. Their emotional intelligence, seniors a little bit different. It gives a perspective when you're managing your team. And I think it really did put it all in perspective and made me an even more empathetic leader.
Yeah, that's a great. So I'm going to have you build on that kind of for the next question. So I think as we grow in our careers, we find ourselves managing different types of people, generational, people who are older than us, people who aren't the same gender or the same ethnicity that we are. And can you talk a little bit about that and how you calibrate for those different and have the empathy for different types of people?
Sure. So I manage a team of 17, and they range from part-time hourly employees who are photographers at Hunter Mountain in New York to, really long-time seasoned professionals of all genders and backgrounds. And so, I think it's just really important Vail Resorts has this amazing kind of leadership competencies structure. And it's just really important to kind of lean into what their competencies and leadership are. I think the ability to flex your style and flex your leadership style while still leading authentically is something that is gained with time and something I'm still learning to perfect. But, I really try to look at it in terms of not so much gender or age, but really looking at those competencies and those strengths and leaning into those. I don't always nail it. There are times where I realize, or I question, am I being harder on this person because he's a man and I think he can handle it? Or, is he projecting? It's about being really honest with yourself and continuing to kind of evaluate and calibrate too, and being receptive to feedback.
Yeah. How about you, Crystal?
So I would echo a lot of what she said. I don't necessarily think about gender either when managing people. I think my team is about half women, half men. And I really focus on the individual person, which I know you already talked about too, like really understanding what their strengths are and what motivates them at the end of the day. Because what motivates one person, obviously not gonna motivate other people on your team. But I struggle with the same thing where it's like, am I being harder on this person? But maybe that's because they have a different motivation. So yeah, I think it's all focusing on the individual.
And then the only thing I would build on that is to say, way back in my career, I took a situational leadership class, and it actually has really stuck with me that it is less about the person and more about the situation or the task at hand and how comfortable they are with that situation or that task, and then what you have to do to help guide or coach them in that moment. So I try to really think about, okay, on this specific thing, has this person done it before? Do they know what they're doing? Are they an expert? So I have to back off. Or are they really, they've never put a strategy together And so we have to talk about, how do you think about it? What do you do? Why do you start from a certain place? And that really helps me in thinking through how, when, and where I lean in, or, let them sort of lead in the situation.
Yeah, all such great conversation and feedback and skills. I know, for us and in the advertising industry, we're trying to bring more people in that didn't grow up in this business, and how we learn to manage people that have different experiences and different backgrounds is incredibly important. So really appreciate that. I'm going to open up for questions in a minute, but first I did ask all of you to think about, I think as women, we also often like to champion other women. So to tell us a person that you really admire and follow and take the lead on, so we can all kind of look at different people and get ideas from what else is happening out there. So Crystal, you get to go first because you're in the middle.
All right. So I thought a lot about this too. And I think someone that I really admire actually is the CMO of my company. I've worked for her for my entire time there, and she's awesome. She's spearheaded building a brand with a bunch of financial institutions, and just is an incredible leader. Super smart, super strategic, and just a very empathetic leader. Yeah, so all I got.
Great. Yeah, I've had the opportunity to work for so many amazing women-led businesses. Our CEO, Kirsten Lynch, is our former CEO. She's an incredible leader, leads very authentically. My boss, Sarah Olson, same thing. So I've been really lucky. But as I continue to think, I'm actually going to give a little shout out to a small business and some up and comers and some younger gals, but they're going to be so embarrassed if they find out. But their names are Bree Rios and Hannah May. They run a little agency out of Denver called the Chatter Club. And they started it like 3 years out of college. They essentially created the agency that they wanted to work for and found the clients that they wanted to work for. And I don't think I would have been that cool, brave, tough to do that. And they just run that whole show, and they are so cool. They're a super fun Instagram follow, and I just find them super inspirational and just super cool. They keep me hip. So
That's awesome.
And then mine is a little bit out of left field. So I follow Myleik Teal on Instagram. She founded Curlbox, which is a service where you can basically pay for a box of hair care products and you get full size products. But more than that, she's an entrepreneur who has a really, I think, a really clear philosophy about what it's like to be a woman in business. And also she's a mother, so she also has a really nice perspective on what it's like to be a very hardworking mom in I don't know, just a generally an entrepreneurial environment where I think you have to grind all the time. And she has changed my philosophy, I guess I would say, on work and being a mom, and what it's like to have maybe not balance, but at least strengths on both sides of the equation.
That's awesome. I think we all draw on those role models every single day as we go through the grind. So with that, we'll open up to any questions that anyone might have. Yes. I think you need a microphone. I think there are rules. Yes.
Hi, I'm Gina from This Morning. I think
Yeah.
everybody remembers that. Well, at least I hope so. My question is more along the lines of how, if you can talk about how your companies work to build more intersectionality as part of your women in leadership, because typically I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for every single person on the planet, but from my experience, oftentimes women in leadership means white women. And so what are companies doing to make sure that you're bringing women who are women, but maybe part of the LGBTQIA community, or Black or Hispanic, or different backgrounds? What are you doing to make sure that you're opening up the pool of women to be more inclusive in that regard?
a lot of work still yet to be done. But I will say, when we talk about these various groups, we have a group, the Rainbow Room, and then we have Powder, it's not letting, these groups shouldn't be working in their own silos. They should also be, working collaboratively together. And I think, that is something that we have kind of worked on is bringing these groups together and being aware of these kind of multiple layers of inclusion. So again, a lot of work to be done. But that is one tangible way that I can think of is bringing these groups together and having them work on collaborative projects, initiatives, things like that.
And I'll say from our perspective, one of the things that we've talked a lot about over the last year in particular is bias in interview practices, in hiring, and really making sure that everyone is highly aware of even some of the little things that are drive biases and you're unconscious of. And so I think we've done a much better job of just making everybody aware, which is the first starting place. We still have a ways to go, but I think having people like you, Gina, on the team is a good step in the right direction.
From my company's perspective, we have done a lot better job of hiring women that are more diverse and putting them into leadership roles so that others in the organization can see that and continue to think about that. I have multiple examples that I could share, but I think we're starting to do a good job at that. But like you said, there's still a lot of work to be done.
Hi, thank you. My name is Olivia Regine. I am from Vista and I am a senior marketing manager there. And I wanted to build off Gina's question actually, because something I heard in this conversation is a lot of the binaries between men and women. And I want to give voice specifically to trans women in this intersectionality conversation we're having now, and particularly how potentially your companies market to trans women and to that experience, because I think the way we speak right now about pronouns, and also I heard a lot of men and women mentioned in the conversation, maternity and paternity leave. I think that's a natural way we use language, but I also want to call out that the way we use language also can pull people out of that conversation. So specifically to the trans women in that community, and also building off of Gina's point to the LGBTQ plus women that might not be able to be child rearing in this scenario when we're talking about paternity leave. So potentially internally, but actually externally, curious how your companies might market to that community.
Sure, I can speak just kind of more broadly on some thoughts, because I was actually becoming aware of that too as I was reviewing my notes, and was intentional actually in using parental leave. But it is hard being deliberate with that language where you have heard your entire life, maternity, paternity. Being deliberate with language is super important. I also notice job descriptions, for example, say he, she, will, and everyone thinks, oh, we're being so inclusive because it's he/she, and that's not good enough. So, I think being really deliberate there, even minor things like, including pronouns, in your email signatures, steps that just indicate that, you're starting to be more aware. So I just kind of want to comment a little bit on that. In terms of benefits for companies beyond the parental leave, I think there's a huge amount of opportunity when it comes to like IVF assistance and adoption assistance. And there's more than one way to start a family. And I think, that is a super important component that more companies and states should be a lot more aware of and in tune with.
So I am one of the people that used those terms, and I think that you make a really good point that we have always used those terms for a long time. So there's a lot of opportunity for progress there, even just today. We do our programs are packaged in a way that is a lot more inclusive. And as far as what are we doing from a promotion perspective, I know that our DEI and B committee is doing a lot of work there, and yeah.
And I would say the same when we talk about our parental leave policy. There's extensions beyond that. And we've also had a lot of diversity and inclusion initiatives that include the LGBTQ community, including some of our ERGs. So it was just a miss on my part to not be speaking more holistically about all the things that we do think about within the organization.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? When I think back to when we first started working on this, we probably should have renamed this session not to be called Women in Marketing, right? So because you set it up to be that way, and there's definitely, I think, a broader theme of how we think about just different people and who we work with, and just this idea that it's women in marketing versus the world seems maybe a little antiquated at this point, and we need to progress that as well.
We're always learning.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a journey for sure.
Thank you so much for your time today. This was really inspiring.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.